Ladies and gentlemen, I am not a fan of Ronda Rousey, especially her WWE run, which I thought was very mid the second time around. Ronda deserves all the credit in the world for what she did in her first WWE stint, but her second stint was very, very mediocre. Now, it's very well documented I'm not a fan of Ronda Rousey, but when Ronda throws Vince McMahon, WWE, Bruce Prichard, and John Laryngitis under the bus, then I'm a fan of Ronda Rousey. Ronda Rousey condemns WWE in her new book, blasts the company, blasts Vince McMahon, and basically tells all about WWE and the backstage atmosphere in regards to the women. We are going to go over all of those most important details right here on Off the Script. Nick Aldis, he may be out of action and off TV for quite some time with an injury. Nobody knows how it happened, but Nick Aldis, the commissioner of SmackDown or the general manager of SmackDown, will not be on television potentially for a very, very long time. And Mauro Ranallo, he may be back, not in WWE, not in AEW, but back in pro wrestling. We got all the news right here on Off the Script, and we will start with just that. MLW is interested in bringing in Mauro Ranallo. Now, nobody watches MLW here. I respect what MLW is. It's a great place for all the independent professional wrestlers to go and find work before maybe going on to an Impact or going on to an AEW. MLW could be bringing in Mauro, who's been absent from the pro wrestling scene for quite some time, says Fightful Select. They have learned that MLW has been in talks with Mauro Ranallo about possibly appearing for the brand. Now, there isn't a done deal, but there is interest, at least, on MLW's side. Now, Court Bauer, the owner of MLW, and Mauro have worked together on a Strikeforce project in the past, and Ranallo has had a lot of time in the play-by-play seat calling pro wrestling. He was the SmackDown lead announcer between 2016 and 2017 before being bullied off the show by JBL, before moving to NXT, where Triple H brought him back and gave him the entire brand. He was the voice of Black and Gold. He left WWE in 2020. I and many others have missed him since dearly, and since then has primarily continued to call combat sports. In 2021, he called the main event of Impact Rebellion between Rich Swann and Kenny Omega, something that I actually watched basically because he was a part of the show. Now, it says that MLW has been in talks with Ranallo and that it's not a done deal, but there is interest, at least, on MLW's side. Now, being in talks doesn't mean that he's going to end up over there. The potential that is, he could end up over there. I'm not looking at him joining MLW. The biggest takeaway for me in regards to this is the fact that Mauro is even in talks with a professional wrestling company, which means that he still has the itch and the desire to call professional wrestling. Now, MLW, I don't know exactly what their taping schedule is. I know they're on TV. I know everything is done beforehand. Mauro probably wouldn't even need to travel. All he needs to do is find a recording studio somewhere, get the footage, and put commentary voiceovers over it. He doesn't even need to be there unless they are live on Fight or wherever they hold their live shows. Mauro and MLW is probably as easy as a transition to get back into pro wrestling as it would be for Mauro Ranallo. If he joined WWE and became the lead voice on a SmackDown, he'd be on the road once a week. And if he did that with AEW, he'd be on the road at least once a week for Dynamite or Collision, wherever they want to place him. Right now, I'd love to see him on Dynamite, being that Dynamite is the A show, but Collision also needs some commentary help as well because Tony Schiavone ain't cutting it out on Collision. The biggest thing about this is that he has an itch to call professional wrestling. Otherwise, he wouldn't be discussing anything with any wrestling promotion, and he wouldn't be discussing anything with MLW. So I'm going to take this as a wait and see. I'd love to see him back on a national stage, but MLW or a promotion like MLW may be the easiest transition if he still wants to do it, because he doesn't have to be on the road at all, and that's something that Mauro, I know, probably doesn't want to do. I'd love to see him back. His energy is infectious. There's nobody like him. He brings a sense of different to the show. He really just hammers it home with the real sports-like presentation. He's rich with story. He calls the in-ring action. He does it all to perfection. He might not be your cup of tea. He certainly is mine. I'd love to see him back. I'll keep an eye out for any updates on this situation about Mauro Ranallo potentially being back in professional wrestling. Nick Aldis. Nick Aldis is set to undergo surgery for a potential torn bicep. PW Insiders reporting that Aldis was recently injured and is expected to undergo surgery on his arm. A torn bicep is believed to be the injury. As of this writing, it's unclear how he suffered the injury or how long he will be off of television. Nick Aldis has been praised as being the SmackDown general manager, holding that position and doing it very well with a no bullshit attitude. Former NWA World Champion made his debut with WWE in September of 2023 as the GM on SmackDown. Former NWA TNA star had been shadowing to become a producer for the company for several months before the move. Triple H said, "No, I want him on television. Let's put him in the GM role with hopes of basically transitioning him to a wrestling role because he's only 36. Let's get the fans to know who he is, so, listen to what he sounds like, get Nick Aldis on television so people become familiar with him, and then maybe get him in a wrestling capacity," which I do think is eventually going to be the plan, but he's killed it as the SmackDown GM. So we will see what happens there. A torn bicep, obviously he's not wrestling, so, he's in incredible shape. I'm assuming this happened in the gym, and it happened as a freak accident, and he might be off television for quite some time, rehabilitating the torn bicep injury that's being rumored here by PW Insider. Now, he could continue to be on television, but it's going to be a little silly if he's on television and he's obviously showcasing that he's wearing something and he's got something over his arm and he's going to be on television injured, and there's not going to be any explanation for it. So it's going to be a funny situation. See how WWE figures that one out, if they're going to remain with him on television or they're just going to keep him off television and maybe come up with some angle of some sort to play it out on television. But right now, the injury is believed to be a torn bicep, and it's unclear right now how he suffered an injury. I'm just going off the fact that he looks to be in incredible shape, and it probably happened while working out. So I will keep you guys updated on that. But as of Friday, I do believe he was on the show. So that is the latest on Nick Aldis. Ronda Rousey. This is something that I laughed my ass off when I read on social media. I just saw all these accounts taking excerpts from Ronda Rousey's new book, and she blasted WWE, blasted Vince, Bruce, John Laurinaitis, Saudi Arabia. This woman, I have not been a fan of Ronda Rousey, but when Ronda goes off on WWE in the manner that she did, I'm a fan of Ronda Rousey, because someone is just letting everybody know exactly what is going on and what the truth really is, while nobody wants to speak up. With her Our Fight book releasing next month, Ronda Rousey did not hold back her thoughts on the company, on WWE, more specifically Vince McMahon, Bruce Prichard, John Laurinaitis, and everything in between, and called out the casting couch culture of WWE. Now, Vince McMahon was described in the book as WWE's Emperor Palpatine, the long-standing villain of the Star Wars franchise, and details how it was hard to distinguish between the on-screen Vince character and the real-life Vince McMahon. She says this: NXT was founded by and under the control of Triple H, real name Paul Levesque. In addition to being my in-ring WrestleMania nemesis, he's arguably one of the best professional wrestlers in the history and one of the better people on the business side. I love how all of the AEW psychopaths were calling for Triple H's head. Oh, he knew this. Oh, he knew that. He needs to be removed. And he is a direct influence on why WWE is being positioned as a better company and doing so much better. He can't do this to our man, Tony Khan. Tribalism. It's cancerous. Stop it. Then the corporate officers were named, and Triple H was not one of them, at least yet. So right now, Triple H's name is in the clear, and Triple H, here in Ronda Rousey's book, was described as one of the better people on the business side. He's married to Stephanie McMahon, who is the daughter of WWE's Emperor Palpatine, Vince McMahon. Vince took over the company from his father in the early 1980s and spent the better part of 40 years playing real-world pro wrestling version of Monopoly, buying up and absorbing smaller promotions until he basically owned them all. It's hard sometimes to know where the evil, unethical slimeball character Vince McMahon played out for the cameras ends and the actual questionably ethical, many times sued, and multiple times accused of sexual misconduct Vince McMahon begins. That blurred line between character and reality is a recurring theme within the WWE universe. Pretty tame for now. Rousey also takes aim at WWE's Saudi Arabia deal and running events in Saudi Arabia. She says pay-per-views are held in major cities like New York, Los Angeles, and Philadelphia, as well as now twice a year in Saudi Arabia, a nation that restricts the rights of women in a way that I'm certain Vince McMahon wishes he could. You know, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't Ronda Rousey wrestle at least once in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia? I know she was against it, and she says she's against it, but she clearly took the payday to be there and wrestle there. I'm guessing the money was too good to pass up, which is why everybody says it's always about the cash or the creative, one or the other, if not, most times, both. Away from Vince McMahon, Ronda Rousey blasted WWE's wider treatment of its female talent during the Attitude Era and later, the Diva years. WWE loves to do well-produced video segments about the legacy of women within the organization, but the truth is, women have largely been footnotes, which was obviously apparent back in the day. Now, both AEW and WWE are making strides to really put the women at the forefront, whether they're a draw, whether they're a ratings draw or not. Obviously, the numbers don't lie. They are not. But everybody's crying about equal opportunity for the women. What the men do, the women can do equally, and they deserve the same opportunity. So both companies have made strides to make the women and its divisions a little bit more prominent. But back in the day, it was not that at all. They didn't look at them as pro wrestlers. They looked at them as sexual objects. For the longest time, they were relegated to serving male characters in a valet role, an overly sexualized supporting character that takes cheap shots when the ref isn't looking. Over time, as the level of female talent grew and society as a whole started to shift, the organization gradually expanded the role of female wrestlers. WWE, I've always said this for years, WWE didn't embrace women's wrestling because they wanted to embrace women's wrestling. They were forced to embrace women's wrestling. Vince didn't start it. Bruce didn't start it. John Laurinaitis didn't start it. Those three men absolutely hated women's professional wrestling. Triple H and Stephanie McMahon and all of the supporting characters that they created on NXT, I'm talking about in the WWE bubble, especially here in North America. In that NXT bubble, that's where it got started. Triple H and Stephanie McMahon said, enough of this. Enough of this. I'm tired of seeing what we're seeing on the main roster. It doesn't present women in the light that they should be presented. And they went out there and changed the game for WWE. Sasha Banks, Bayley, Charlotte, Emma, Paige, so on and so forth down there. Bianca Belair came from NXT. Rhea Ripley. They did the Mae Young Classic where they invited women from all over the world to join WWE for that tournament, at least to present women's professional wrestling. We didn't see it then. Again, WWE didn't do it because Vince, he didn't push women's wrestling that hard at all. So when I say WWE embraced women's wrestling because they were forced to embrace women's wrestling, that is the truth. And Ronda Rousey goes into that. Over time, as the level of female talent grew and society as a whole started to shift, the organization gradually expanded the role of female professional wrestling because they had to, not because they wanted to. WWE bills itself as a sports entertainment organization. And just like in the mainstream entertainment industry, there was, by all accounts, a casting couch culture where men backstage in powerful positions pressured female talent for sexual favors in return for airtime. There were so many public accusations and scandals, it's hard to keep track of, and more that I'm sure the WWE managed to sweep under the rug. It's amazing. What does she mean by that? Does she know firsthand what had happened years before she got there because she was told something in private and then released it and revealed it in this book? Did things happen while she was there? That's another question. Was the Vince McMahon administration, while the time Ronda Rousey was there, holding a casting couch or involving themselves in a casting couch culture when it comes to the women? What happened there? You know how many times I went on here and said, well, why is this person on television? Why is that person on television? Why is so-and-so on television? They clearly can't wrestle. They're there simply because of their looks. Who is she talking about? And what time frame is she actually talking about? Do I believe things like that happened in WWE back in the day? Absolutely. John Laurinaitis was in charge of the roster. He was the man in charge of all of that. And he held auditions to hire female talent, and he would go and read magazines and look through swimsuit magazines and make his determination on who to hire by how they looked in a bathing suit. That's the level of people that Vince McMahon surrounded himself with. This man was head of talent relations, and that's how he went about his hiring process. That's what Vince wanted. John Laurinaitis was only a full man. You don't think Bruce Prichard indulged in that culture? Give me a fucking break. When his head starts to roll, that's when I laugh. He's absolutely part of that culture, yet he's out there claiming that he's scot-free. I don't know anything about that. I can't talk about that. No fucking shit, you can't talk about that. The man knows Vince McMahon for nearly 30 years. You don't think Bruce Prichard knows all of Vince's darkest, dirtiest secrets? You don't think Bruce Prichard has seen a thing or fucking 15? You don't think he's overheard Vince saying something? The man knows more than anybody. Why do you think Kevin Dunn walked out? Who do you think was holding these casting couches? Who do you think partaked in these casting couch situations? Bruce, John Laurinaitis, for all we know, Kevin Dunn as well. Who knows? But when is Ronda talking about? What time frame is she talking about? Can't see that. It's probably not realistic to think that it's happening, in recent times, but back in the day, I could absolutely see this being the case. Absolutely. I just found that to be, wow, man, color me shocked. that Ronda said that. Women weren't just being demeaned backstage, but center stage. Up until 2007, bra and panties matches where female wrestlers won the match by stripping their opponent down to their underwear were an actual fucking thing. Even after that gimmick was retired by WWE executives, I'm sure very reluctantly, and with a lot of lamenting about political correctness, it was still clear that the organization placed more value on a woman's physical appearance than her physical ability. The Divas era, with its pink rhinestone butterfly title belt, dawned around the same time. Women, while now portrayed as wrestlers, were still expected to look a certain way. Think lots of makeup, little clothing, and huge tits. It would take almost another decade, years after I proved women could be a huge combat sports attraction, before women truly started to get time in the squared circle, what diehards call a pro wrestling ring. And it was only after WWE was basically armbarred into it, following a global social media backlash to hashtag give divas a chance, after divas were given a total of 30 seconds, less time than it takes most people to read this paragraph, for a nationally televised tag team match. 4 women were given less time to collectively wrestle than every single man on the roster got for his intro music alone. Presented this information as a person outside of the WWE wrestling world, you might draw the conclusion that there is a troubling foundational sexist, patriarchal culture within the WWE. You would be right. I have nothing but respect for the female wrestlers who paved the way for women wrestlers today, and nothing but disgust for the amount of sexist, degrading bullshit that they were put through. I mean, is she wrong? She's obviously going over everything that everybody already assumed, but to hear it in her own words, the way she words it, I could hear the tone in her words coming off the page. I'm not surprised by any of it. The butterfly title was an embarrassment. WWE wanted to shift to women actually performing in the ring, yet they wanted to still let you know with the butterfly title that, yeah, we'll give you professional wrestling. You want to see our women wrestle? We'll give you a little bit of wrestling. But the Divas butterfly title was basically still their symbolism of, we still think of women as sexual objects. I don't know why women, this is what I don't really understand in today's day and age. I don't know why women can't be sexy and a great professional wrestler at the same time. I don't really understand that. Like, some of you I know are watching women's professional wrestling because you think they're attractive and you need something to really latch onto. That's shallow as it is. But I don't know why you can't be a beautiful woman and be a great professional wrestler at the same time. There are plenty of those. WWE never thought that. They thought, all right, well, she's all tits, she's all ass. That's all the people give a shit about. We'll give her a couple of minutes. And that's it. Well, nobody wants to see this shit. They were speaking for the majority of the fans, thinking that the majority of the fans wanted that and only that. Meanwhile, there is a huge pocket of fans out there that want to see these women professionally wrestle. We understand that they're good-looking women. But you could do the good-looking shtick and wrestle at the same time. I didn't really understand that aspect. I don't really understand that line of thinking from several people. Ronda Rousey was asked about MMA fighters having real-life beef and if Rousey had issues with anyone. This was Ronda Rousey's response. In MMA, I originally just started them for publicity, but those other bitches did not get the memo, and so they became personal. And in WWE, it's all fake. I love them, except for Bruce Prichard and John Laurinaitis. They can go fuck themselves. Anytime that Laurinaitis and Bruce Prichard are thrown underneath the bus, somewhere with a cold beverage, I sit, smirking and laughing. I love it. Elsewhere, Rousey's Instagram features a clip to promote the upcoming interview where she labels WWE a shit show and firmly states how she has zero interest in ever returning to the company. Having finished up with WWE at last year's SummerSlam, Ronda Rousey has since worked a couple of independent shows and teamed with Marina Shafir in Ring of Honor to take on Athena and Billy Starks. Whether she ever returns to the ring remains to be seen, but it is for sure that she would not and will not make a return to WWE. Now, while speaking on the Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer noted that even people who previously defended Vince McMahon when the suit first came out basically have given up on defending him. If you think of Ronda Rousey, her background, her mindset, and her reading this lawsuit, says Dave Meltzer, you know it's pretty easy to see she's going to be infuriated by this lawsuit. Most women were pretty repulsed that read it, including in the company. There are people in the company who looked at that thing, and the first thing they tried to do was defend him, this and that. A lot of people did not try and defend him at all within the company. I mean, people who were even in the situation where they've been defending other people in the company, to me, nobody bothers to try and defend Vince McMahon to me. It's almost like they've thrown in the towel on him. It's like he's gone and we can't even try to defend him. End quote. Vince McMahon's never going to be back. That doesn't mean Vince McMahon still isn't looming in the fucking depths of the shadows, still reaching out to people who were there that he was very close with, that he had as his personal confidants, like a Bruce Prichard, like a Michael Hayes, and all these other people out there. This is why people have called for everybody who was around and knew Vince McMahon in that way for them to be actively removed. Because no matter, and Ronda Rousey said as much about Bruce Prichard, as long as Bruce Prichard is there, some semblance of Vince McMahon will always remain with the company. They need to be actively removed. The poison of Vince McMahon still lingers, not as prominent as it was before, but it still lingers. You still are getting some side effects with those names and those individuals still there. Obviously, Vince is not coming back. He's not allowed in the TKO offices. Mark Shapiro has stated as such. He will not be back. He doesn't work here. We haven't heard from him. We don't really give a shit what happens to him. They're going to run the company the best way that they know how. He's not backstage. He's not Gorilla. He's not part of the creative team. For all we know, he's still fucking getting his shit in to people that still work there that are close with him. Again, we don't really know for sure. But Vince McMahon, it is a great thing to sit here comfortably and say that WWE exists without the physical presence of Vince McMahon. That in itself is the greatest victory us, the fans, have ever seen in the history of WWE. I love that Ronda is speaking up, and I've been against Ronda for what she's done. Clearly, she loves professional wrestling. Otherwise, she wouldn't be saying this. She's speaking up for everybody that doesn't have a voice. I know Ronda was brought down creatively. I know that WWE was booking Ronda. Vince, Bruce, John Laurinaitis were booking Ronda because they thought one way, and Ronda, no matter her star power, she's in their realm. WWE was going to do best, and Vince McMahon was going to do best by what he thought was best, not Ronda. Not because she's a big female star, MMA, combat, sports athlete. They don't give a fuck about that. I'm glad Ronda is speaking up about everything that she saw, everything that she felt, and everything that was the backstage culture in WWE while she was there. She was there long enough to get a gist of how things operate, and it's all coming out in this book. I love it. Not a fan of what Ronda did, not a fan of what Ronda went into the second run with, but now clearly we see she was disinterested in the start because of who was there. I wonder if Ronda was back in WWE now with the new administration, with new leadership, how she would operate, knowing that everybody, mostly everybody, that she's talking about here is not there anymore. Slowly becoming a fan of Ronda Rousey, not by her in-ring standards, but the respect that Ronda has shown the women, and the fact that Ronda is speaking up and being the voice of the voiceless, that some of these women can and may never be able to get their voices heard. People that work there, she's that voice. That I respect. She's standing up for what's right and standing up for what's good. No matter how we feel about Ronda Rousey, she deserves a round of applause. The fact that she took all of this and put this out there for us to understand. I love that. Thank you guys very much for all your support. If you enjoyed today's Off the Script on this Thursday afternoon, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, turn on the bell for notifications. Go check out all the other content on the channel. Plenty of it. We were live on Monday, live on Tuesday, live on Wednesday, and we'll be live on Friday for the SmackDown post right here on Off the Script. And if you did enjoy today's video, hit that thumbs up. Let's try for 1,000 likes right here on OTS. Guys, I'll be live tomorrow with SmackDown right here on OTS. I'll see you guys later.